In the early hours of today, reports began emerging that, if confirmed, would mark one of the most dangerous escalation points Israel has faced in decades. Claims that a large-scale missile barrage struck central Tel Aviv in the early morning hours, hitting dense civilian areas and triggering mass casualty responses across the city. According to early reports and emergencies assessments, multiple precision-guided projectiles reached urban zones that are normally considered among the most heavily protected airspaces in the world, raising immediate questions about how such strikes were possible and what they signal about the evolving nature of the conflict. Israeli officials have not finalized casualty figures, but preliminary estimates suggest an exceptionally high number of fatalities and injuries, numbers that, if verified, would represent the deadliest single-day civilian toll Israel has experienced since the modern regional wars of the 20th century. Residential towers were reportedly hit, emergency services were overwhelmed, and hospitals activated mass casualty protocols as rescue teams searched through collapsed structures. The psychological impact of such reports matters as much as the physical damage, because strikes on major population centers fundamentally alter escalation dynamics. Border clashes can be contained. City strikes cannot. If confirmed, this would represent a transition from contained confrontation to strategic shock, where the objective is no longer signaling, but breaking deterrence. One of the most alarming elements under assessment is the reported difficulty in intercepting the incoming projectiles, raising questions about whether speed, flight profile, saturation, or guidance methods overwhelm defensive systems designed to prevent exactly this scenario. Israeli defense officials have stated they are reviewing system performance, avoiding definitive conclusions while acknowledging that the attack profile differed from previous engagements. In modern warfare, no defense is perfect, but when even partial penetration occurs in a symbolic city, perception changes instantly. Deterrence relies on belief, and belief weakens the moment protection appears uncertain. Statements from Israeli political pressure for an overwhelming response. International reactions began forming within hours, with governments urging restraint while simultaneously preparing for the likelihood that restraint may not hold. This is the dangerous window where information is incomplete, emotions are high, and decisions made under uncertainty shape the trajectory of entire regions. Even before confirmation of exact figures, the narrative has already begun to harden, transforming a border conflict into a perceived existential challenge. That transformation, once underway, is extremely difficult to reverse. If the reported strike profile and casualty scale are confirmed, the implications extend far beyond immediate retaliation and enter the realm of systemic regional destabilization, where escalation logic begins to operate independently of intent. When civilian centers absorb mass casualties, governments lose political room to maneuver. Calls for proportionality are drowned out by demands for decisive action, and military planners are tasked not with restoring deterrence, but with eliminating perceived threats entirely. Israeli officials have indicated they are assessing response options across multiple domains, language that historically precedes broader campaigns rather than limited strikes. At the same time, regional actors are recalculating risk exposure, because once a major city becomes a battlefield, the assumption of contained conflict collapses. Allies are drawn closer, adversaries probe for opportunity, and neutral parties are forced to prepare for spillover. The most destabilizing aspect of such escalation is not the initial strike, but the retaliation cycle it triggers. Each response is justified as defensive, yet each expands the scope of acceptable targets. Precision gives way to volume. Deterrence gives way to dominance. International institutions call for emergency sessions, not because they can halt events, but because escalation requires visible attempts at control, even when control is slipping. Markets respond instantly to perceived instability. Travel routes are reassessed, insurance premiums spike, and regional commerce absorbs shock before any ceasefire is even discussed. If defensive systems are perceived to have been stressed or partially bypassed, adversaries elsewhere take notice, not to copy tactics immediately, but to study vulnerabilities. Modern conflict spreads through observation as much as participation. The strategic danger is that once the threshold of major urban strikes is crossed, returning to lower intensity confrontation becomes politically impossible. Leaders are trapped by expectations they did not fully choose. De-escalation requires time, credibility, and intermediaries capable of offering face-saving exits, all of which are scarce during moments of mass casualty shock. Even if retaliation is limited, the precedent remains. The conflict's center of gravity shifts from borders to cities, from signaling to survival. This is how regional wars expand without formal declarations, driven by momentum rather than planning. Whether today's reports are fully confirmed or revised in detail, The trajectory they suggest is unmistakable. Once the possibility of large-scale civilian targeting enters the strategic equation, every future decision is made under the shadow of worst-case assumptions. That shadow changes behavior permanently. It narrows options, accelerates timelines, and reduces tolerance for ambiguity. This is why moments like this matter more than statistics. They redefine what comes next. If confirmed, this would not simply be another strike in an ongoing conflict, but a rupture that forces all actors to reconsider limits they believed still existed. And history shows that once those limits are questioned, escalation becomes easier than restraint, even for those who understand the cost.